Hey folks, we need to take a few minutes and talk about Micron, the big giant memory chip manufacturing company based out of Boise, Idaho. They reported earnings last week and things are not looking so great. The company just wrapped up its fiscal year 2022. For the full year period, it was actually pretty good. They actually reported a brand new record annual year for revenue for sales. But in the fourth quarter in particular, that's the period that ended on September 1st. So the 3 months ended basically through August 2022. The revenue actually fell to 6.6 billion. It's actually about a 20% year over year decline and a big more than 20% sequential decline from the third quarter, where their sales actually peaked at about 8.6 billion. Things are not about to get any better either. So to start their new fiscal year 2023, so that'll be the 3 months that basically take us almost to the end of calendar year 2022. They're actually expecting revenue of 4.25 billion, plus or minus 250 million, but who's counting? So basically less than half of the sales that they were just reporting a few months ago this past summer. What is going on with Micron and really the whole chip industry? So as we talk a lot about with semiconductor stocks, this is a cyclical industry historically. Things are getting better as time improves for some of these companies, but for Micron in particular, this is a very cyclical business. It's a manufacturer. So they produce these memory chips, which are a basic component that go into more complex computing systems. So they're oftentimes at the whim of their customers. And if their customers' inventory is too high, they might back off on orders. And then when it gets too low, they'll increase their orders for Micron's memory chips. So you end up with this business that is really, really up and down. It can be a very, very wild ride. Here's what that looks like over the last decade. You can see this chart here showing a few peaks, one back in 2014, 2015, another one here in 2017, 2018, and then again, most recently here in 2021, late 2021, early 2022. Ultimately, this stock chart you're looking at here is tied to Micron's ebbing and flowing revenue and profits. So just taking a quick look here at the revenue, again, you can see a peak here in 2018. Again, a peak here in 2022 based on the current outlook for next year. And if you scroll on down here to net income, you can see the big drop off in the last cycle there in 2019, the last through 2020. So this is probably going to happen again as we progress through the end of 2022 and then get into calendar year 2023. But good news for Micron. So unlike past downturns, Micron has really done a lot of work to make sure that it's walking away from deals that are really, really low profit margin. So it's actually increased its profitability by quite a bit. That should create a bit of a floor underneath profits during this present downturn. In addition to that, Micron's balance sheet is in better shape than it has been in a long time. So as of September 1st, 2022, the company had about $11 billion in cash, short-term investments, and long-term investments, offset by just over $6.8 billion in debt. So in total, net cash and investments, net of debt, about $4.2 billion. So that puts Micron in really good shape to weather this present downturn in sales. So back to the original question, is Micron in trouble? More specifically, what about the stock? What does that mean for you and me as investors? Well, let's start with the business, because ultimately that's what's going to drive the stock. Remember, this is cyclical. What we don't know right now is how deep this cyclical downturn is going to go. So the next quarter revenue outlook is for about $4.25 billion. Could it go lower? It could. So on the earnings call, CEO Sanjay Mehrotra said that this downturn is probably going to last through the first half of calendar year 2023. So right now, it's the beginning of October 2022. We've got 6 to 9 months left before this downturn maybe sort of rights itself, because ultimately what's happening here is a lot of Micron's customers are putting a hold on orders while they work through their existing inventory. So depending on how low sales go for Micron on a quarterly basis, that's going to kind of dictate where the stock heads here in the next 6 to 9 months. But let's look beyond just the immediate term outlook for 2023. I pulled this slide from Micron's last earnings presentation for the fourth quarter of 2022. Specifically, let's take a look at this very last paragraph. So they expect their DRAM, that's roughly 3/4 of Micron's sale, to now grow at a mid-teens percentage over the long term. So this is like their multi-year outlook, average growth for sales. And then their NAND market to grow at about 28% over the long term. So even faster growth. A lot of this is going to be driven by improvements in NAND memory technology. That's a discussion for a different video. But basically the takeaway here is over the course of the next decade, like through the 2020s, through 2030, things like cloud computing, data center, AI, automotive technology, 5G mobile network development, all of this is going to overall raise the demand for memory. So while this particular downturn that could last through 2023 is looking pretty ugly at the moment, Micron's very long-term outlook is still really solid. This is still going to be a growth company, I think, over the next decade. So is Micron stock in trouble? Well, the business is fine, but the stock is a different story. I mean, it's already declined by nearly 50% so far this year. The market has a way of sniffing out these cyclical downturns. A lot of this downturn may have already been priced in, but what the market is really going to be looking for in the next quarter or two is finding some sort of bottom. So we're going to have to look at industry demand for memory chips. And we're going to want to look for signs that demand is starting to pick up, that it's starting to reach some sort of trough and then return back to growth sometime, hopefully, in 2023. But here's the thing, just like the market has a way of sniffing out these cyclical downturns before they happen, the same thing is likely to happen when the next bull run on memory chips happens. So before Micron ever comes out and says, hey, we've returned to growth, profit margins are back on the rise, Micron stock will likely already have started rising again. How it's typically worked in the past, the market does a great job at figuring out when actual demand is picking up before the financial results are actually reported. That being said, I'm being cautious with Micron stock right now. This is a stock that's already in my holdings. If you're a trader and you're looking for some sort of bottom, this may not be it. I expect this to be a really rough ride for the next 6 months. But if you're a longer term investor, there's still a lot to like about Micron, the company, over the next 10 years. And if you're not interested in trying to time a bottom, this might be a great point to start looking at the stock again. Don't go out and buy a big position. Please be cautious with this one. This cyclical downturn, we don't know a lot about it yet. We don't know how long it's going to last, how long it'll take those inventories to be worked through. Be cautious, but with the stock already having declined 50% and Micron now in the midst of the downturn itself, the market's priced in a lot of this pain already, and it's going to begin looking for a bottom here at some point in the next 6 months. So that's it for quarterly updates on Micron. That was big news last week, great indicator for the whole chip industry, the whole computing industry, as well as the economy at large, since Micron is a very sensitive manufacturing business. We'll keep an eye on that going forward here at Chip Stock Investor. Later this week, I'll be working on a video on Moore's Law, as promised, and specifically what it means for you and I as chip stock investors. Stay tuned. See you next time.